I found out later on just how
Children
devastating
decided it was time for mother and father.
So much.
Patti, this is the group. This is Patti. If I remember correctly, you're a Gorham.
I am a Gorham resident, and that's how I ended up here about a year and a half ago, because I actually run the museum shop. So I'm not a historian, but I came in here and I loved this group so much. So when Lisa had contacted, and I guess you contacted us a while ago, I wanted to come. And she had asked at one point that instead of the typical presentation that we show you some of the Christmas decorations. So I'll put a big disclaimer on myself right now in that we're used to talking about history with Victoria Mansion. So when it comes to the Christmas decorations, we have volunteers come in and do the decorations, so they are absolutely not historically accurate. So this isn't going to be a history lesson whatsoever today, but hopefully it's something pretty that will wet your whistle. And I was just talking back, a lot of local people have driven by Victoria. Can you hear me okay? Is it okay? A lot of local people have driven by Victoria Mansion on several occasions and not gone in because frankly, and now I'm saying this in front of a camera, but I think it looks like Norman Bates's mother's house from the outside. I think it's a little foreboding. I don't think it's particularly lovely, except for now at Christmas time. So I don't think it really, the exterior sort of belies what's going on in the interior. And the interior is a pop of wow. 10 years ago this week, I brought my son to Victoria Mansion for the first time. He was an 8-year-old little boy, and I thought, well, this would be a fun little thing for us to do once. And then we just kept going back, and then I volunteered. So we're always looking for volunteers. And if anyone is interested in that, feel free to ask me about that. It's a really great program. But then again, sometimes you get in and you never get out like me. So now I've been there for 8 years. So, welcome to Victoria Mansion. I put a slideshow together, and I remember in the old days, you used to be able to pick a slide up and put it in a carousel and make it work. And today it's all technical. So I'm not good with that stuff. I work in the 19th century, and to me, the carousel from 1965 is as modern as I got. So if anything's in here upside down, or this one is actually from 2014, please forgive me for, I'm not very technically.
That's okay. We
thank
had
you.
a trip to India last week, and many of them were sideways.
I did try. I tried. There was some of this, and that's why I have 2014 instead of the exterior this year, because that was sideways. So here we are. So has anyone been to Victoria Mansion before? Excellent. Okay. Excellent. Oh, perfect. Perfect. Victoria Mansion sees about 35,000 people a year at this time. Yeah, not at this time, but in this point of time in history, we see about 35,000 a year. Close to 10,000 at Christmas alone. So Christmas is our greatest fundraiser, and to me, I like Christmas the best because that's when we see more local people. And to me, that's a little bit more exciting. I mean, we love the tourists and we love to share the history of the museum. But to me, to see local people come in, particularly people who've been coming in for 30 years or people who haven't been in before, I like to see it because really those are the people who support us. Those are the people, this is the people, the people, the Victoria Mansion's been here over 150 years. So this is your house as well as ours. It's still privately owned. It's not owned by the city or the state. So we're still owned by the Victorian Ladies Society. So no one's going to be tearing us down anytime soon. So this is Victoria Mansion, and this is the dude who built the house. So this is Ruggles, Sylvester Morse, and Ruggles was originally from a tiny town up north called Leeds, Maine. Ruggles married Olive, who was from Durham, Maine, and then they go to Boston, then New York. They're learning the hotel business. They end up in New Orleans, which is the big southern port at the time, and he makes a ton of money as a manager, which I think is kind of interesting because he makes enough money to build Victoria Mansion, which of course is a 20-room, 11,000 square foot, 3-bedroom, 4-bathroom mansion by the seashore, and he only comes up 2 weeks out of the year. This gentleman, yeah.
His first name was
Ruggles, correct. Ruggles. Every once in a while, my phone will change Ruggles to Ruffles. So, So anyways, this is Gustav Herder. And I just put his picture in because Gustav Herder is the furniture designer who designed and manufactured just about every piece in Victorian Mansion. And we do have about 90 to 95% of the original contents of the house. So that, yeah. So when people walk into Victorian Mansion, it's not just an old house with a bunch of old stuff. What it is original furnishings from pre-Civil War. The house is built between 1858 and 1860. So the fact that we have just about all the furnishings really speaks to the generosity of the families who lived there. So this is Gustav Herder. He is the furniture designer. We have the largest commission of Herder furniture in the world. I think most people don't recognize the name because, let's face it, we all are not a bunch of Victorians, but every once in a while you do get some New Yorkers who recognize the name and they're very much impressed. This is, of course, the grand staircase. When you come into Victorian Mansion, that is one of the most iconic images of Victorian Mansion. And this is, as it was before, the designers came in and put some decorations on that. The window up here is really hard to see. I do have a close-up, and we'll talk a little bit about it, more about it, as we get into the slides, because I hope there's a close-up in here of it, because that, too, is a very important image to Victorian Mansion. What I've done for this slideshow, because I had done a regular one before, Lisa had asked that we make this more focused on Christmas and keep it light, because it's Christmas and we'll enjoy. So as you can see, the area is transformed at Christmas time. So we have volunteer designers come in. They're not historians. They do volunteer their time. Some of them have been with us for over 30 years, and some of them are new this year. This is a slide of a ballerina dancing on the staircase. We have plenty of events at Christmas time. Actually, we do events throughout the year, but we're pretty event heavy during December. So this may or may not be a ballerina from the Nutcracker. It wasn't labeled when I put the slide in, but I thought she looked lovely. I will tell you, whenever we do anything musical at the museum, it is absolutely breathtaking, and it's almost as though the building were designed acoustically to have musicians in the house. It's absolutely spectacular. This is the reception room undecorated. When you come into Victorian Mansion, and those of you who have toured the mansion, you know this is the first room you go into. In Victorian times, you could come calling on your neighbor. You could come calling on any house you really wanted to see. You would have your own calling card, and it would be folded 17 different ways, and that would tell the servant what you're there for. So really, it's an in-house waiting room. So this is Ruggles and his wife Olive, and those are their portraits. These are more views of the reception room. The reception room you might have seen if you watch local news. Has been in the news in the last few years because that's under restoration. We have gone through extensive conservation work to restore the hand-painted walls to their natural beauty. Giuseppe Guidicini was an Italian opera house painter, and he supervised the painting in the interior. And as I mentioned, the house is 11,000 square feet, and he did it all in 4 months, which is really cool. And here it is decorated. That picture I snapped yesterday. The theme this year at Christmas is Christmas through a child's eye. So the designer put a whole bunch of large packages to give you the feel of being a child yourself and seeing, because that is actually 14-foot ceilings. So the package tree is probably about 12 feet. And here it is decorated in another year, which I'm not quite sure what the theme was on that year, but I just thought the mantle was done absolutely beautifully. And I'll tell you a little secret as someone who's worked there now for 8 Christmases in a row. You see this, because we decorate this in November, you see this and then go home and decorate your own house. And it gets a little challenging. This is another view of the fireplace. The fireplaces are all surrounded by white Italian marble, and those were all carved and designed for each individual room in Victorian Mansion. This is the dining room, which is right next to the reception room, which in and of itself is a place of beauty. If you're in the if you're in the reception room and Mr. and Mrs. Morse have decided you're going to be received, you may end up at dinner here. And this would probably be an 8-course meal. The walls are made of American chestnut, and the ceiling is hand-painted. This is a Christmas decoration. This was likely done by Dodge the florist. They've been doing the dining room for several years now. And here it is, that was yesterday. She's got some giant nutcrackers in there. It is amazing to me how the designers come up with just different decorations every year. And they do this really on their own. This is their financial commitment. We don't pay them to do this. So they do this really for the love of the art and for the love of the museum, and hopefully it gives them a little bit of advertising. Again, where we see almost 10,000 people at Christmas time, it does help. This is a close-up. I thought this was lovely. This was another year. How they worked pink into the dining room, which I thought was just absolutely elegant. And you can see actually our original china. We do have the original porcelain plates. And that's the original glassware on the table. So just to give you an idea, because this doesn't often come up in the Christmas decorations, this is the ceiling in the dining room. And this is all done in a trompe-l'oeil paint style, meaning to fool the eye. So that is supposed to look like wood on the ceiling. There is no wood on that ceiling. That's all painted to look that way. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I will tell you, what gives it a 3-dimension is that's done on plaster. So if you just stripped all the wood off, it would be 3-dimensional. But that's there's no wood on the ceiling. And then we just put in another picture next door. This is actually the Turkish smoking room, which I'll show you a picture of in a few minutes. But the marble is painted. That's faux. That's fake marble. So, and it's not that they didn't have the money. This was really sort of an avant-garde paint style to really get you talking as you go through a Victorian mansion. I think probably Ruggles' idea was to get you to talk about his house. In Victorian times, a gentleman wanting to show how successful he is does it in a few ways, and one way is to show what he's got. This is the parlor as it stands without the Christmas decorations. That's an original carpet in that room. We do have 2 original carpets left in Victorian Mansion. These are gasolier fixtures. All the light fixtures are all original. They were electrified in 1902. But they were all lit by gas up until that time. So this is the parlor. This is all original furniture in here. And the mirrors are in such beautiful condition. It was rumored that for years that our mirrors were made with diamond dust. They are not. He just used really good materials. And these are just some of the furnishings from the parlor that I wanted you to be able to see. Because I think you get people coming through Victorian Mansion, and really, if there's one place you can go over the top with Christmas decoration, and that is in a Victorian mansion. But we do get people coming through that say how beautiful it is, but how much prettier they feel it is without the decorations, because you can really see the artifacts. And that makes us happy. So these are some very important pieces. These are so important to us. These are all designed by Gustav Herder. We loaned those to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City for a few months. That they had a Gustav Herder exhibit. And they were very grateful for us for that. And this is also artwork. This is the iconoclast. This is a very large, I think it's, I don't want to guess, it's very large. It's actually bigger than this screen. Painting by Emanuel Leutze. This is also done in the parlor. Emanuel Leutze also did Washington crossing the Delaware. So that's just to give you an idea of what kind of artwork they had in there. And then this, of course, is Columbia painted over the stained glass window going upstairs. The reason I bring that up is because Mr. Morse makes his money in New Orleans pre-Civil War. And because he's a Mainer, but he's making his money in New Orleans. His support is with the Southern cause for the duration of the war up until the end, and then he does retire in the main house. This is the parlor transformed at Christmas time. Last year our theme was City by the Sea, so you can see the designer has worked in a lot of blues and aqua colors and antiqued oars. What you don't see with the Christmas decorations is we will go through prior to the designers coming in, and every little surface has a matching piece of felt over it, so you can't see, because we can't have anything chipping and scratching up the artifacts. Even the marble fireplaces are covered with felt. This is the tree yesterday, and I'm sorry that is so blurry, but his interpretation of Christmas through a child's eye. He has a stife lion, and the stife lion holding a cub is a very big stife lion. But this tree is 12 feet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good heavens.
This is the parlor. I found this picture from a few years ago. I just thought it was cool. I really, really like what they've done. And again, come to Victoria Mansion and then try to do a decorating at your home or place of work. Because to match that is absolutely insane. But this is, I thought this was breathtaking. Every once in a while, I can turn off the lights in the museum and just walk through without, and that's even better.
Were those
This-
feathers on the tree? Or was it
I think it's cotton.
cotton?
Oh, there might be feathers that mixed in there as well. Correct.
You
And
sort of have to imagine that there's a tree there.
pardon me.
You sort of have to imagine that
There's
there's a tree.
exactly. Yeah. Some of our designers are florists, and they do so much with florals that you don't even see it. You don't see the greenery in there. This is the library, and this was from several years ago, and I wanted to put this in because in the history of Victoria Mansion being decorated, we went from simple to extravagant. And really, I think where we have people that will come in year after year, I think you sort of have to knock their socks off. I think if we did what was historically accurate, it would be boring because they would probably bring a very small tree in, maybe the night before Christmas, maybe a few days before, but there wouldn't be the kind of decorations whatsoever that we have in there. So we do let them use their own interpretation, but they're under strict rules not to bring any glitter into the museum because that can harm the carpets. There are certain things they can't do. They can't attach things to the wood without, we have a special plastic coated wire, and we also have a conservator, and we'll have people on staff at the time that can help the designers attach anything to any artifact in the museum because it is a museum and we want to preserve everything for generations to come. This is the library today, or yesterday. This designer comes to us from Bridgeton, from the Clipper Merchant Tea House. She picked the library. She wanted to do the library. Her designs really worked very well. One year she did a book tree, which was very cool. And this, you couldn't stand in there long enough to see everything. We shut down in November for the designers to come in and do their installations, but really they'll get the theme, they'll get their packet earlier in the year. So some of them have been working on their rooms all year long. So they only have about 2.5 weeks to do installations, and they do them fast. And then it takes probably only 2 hours to break them down. Here's the stair hull. Because we have finished down on the first floor, the kitchen is not on the tour. In the 1940s, when the house becomes a museum, the caretaker gutted the museum and put in a modern kitchen, which works well for us in that we can have parties there, but it's a disappointment because the original kitchen was never documented. We have historians on staff that can say what should have been there, but because we're guessing, we've decided to leave it as a modern kitchen so that we can do fundraisers, because everything you're walking into when you come into Victoria Mansion, besides the Christmas decorations, is authentic. So if you walk in during the regular season, you're seeing what they saw in 1860. So this is the grand staircase as you walk in, and this is a photograph of the staircase from the second floor landing, so you get a little sneak peek onto the third floor. And I wanted to put that in there just to give you an idea that you're walking up the stairs right now. These are some close-ups of the stained glass. Stained glass really doesn't quite come into Victorian house design at this time, not yet. So they really sort of predate this by about 10 years. Ruggles, making his money in the hotel business, starts pulling ideas from opulent Victorian hotels, and he puts them into his summer home in Portland. So these are stained glass. That the one on the staircase, let's see if I have a close-up of that. Good. The roundel that has a little crack in it, that was the state seal of the state of Maine at the time that the war broke out. The one below with the pelicans was the state seal of the state of Louisiana when the war broke out. And right above is Columbia, which I mentioned before. The reason it's important to us that all this is together, because this is a man that supports the Southern cause, because he's done this, we feel, because this is obviously a permanent structure, we were hoping that perhaps he did want to keep the Union together, that's where his heart truly lied. This is really one of the most iconic images of Victoria Mansion. And here is the stair hall, as you see it at Christmas time. Designer Danny Hatt. This was, I think, this was last year. I snapped this picture because of the just opulence coming down from the third floor of the design that Danny did, just to really bring it home that it's a whole different season at Victoria Mansion. We have parties at Victoria Mansion at this time of year. People actually can rent Victoria Mansion to have a party. They don't go behind the ropes. Yeah, but they do. This is an in-house party, I believe. This would have been one of our membership groups, a Gaslight League, so they're having a New Year's Eve party there. I will tell you, there is nothing more wonderful and magical than walking through that building with a glass of champagne and chamber music playing or opera. We do have an opera event in the summertime. This is the interior of the smoking room, the Turkish smoking room. This is the oldest Turkish or Islamic style in a private residence in the United States. Quite possibly the oldest smoking room in a private residence in the United States. We just haven't found one older yet. And they didn't do a smoking room like we do today because everyone's worried about secondhand smoke. They did it because it was more of a gentleman's retreat. This is a way to say, I have so much money, I have a room to go to smoke. Now my feeling is, those are sliding glass pocket doors. My feeling is, and I don't know Ruggles all that well, even though my son thinks I do, but I don't know him well enough to guess, but I would assume that the idea is close the door and keep the ladies out. I figure if I could go back and be a fly on the wall in any room, it would be that room, because that's where the guys are talking. So, so that, I would imagine the conversations would have been quite interesting, because you have a man that owns this house who helped to finance the statue of Robert E. Lee in New Orleans that was just taken down. And then you have a bunch of Maine people going into that room. I imagine it would be quite an interesting political discussion. And here is the smoking room yesterday. Very lightly decorated. Because this is really our first fully restored room, there really isn't a need to go in there and put a lot of decoration, because I think the room in and of itself oohs and ahs. So really this is pretty close to what the gentleman would have seen had they been here at that time. This is the green bedroom. This is likely the master bedroom because there is a dressing room and a full bathroom attached to this room. So this is likely where Ruggles and Olive slept. And this is done by a new designer, and it was difficult to capture every bit of decoration in this room because there's so much. And every time I go in there, I see more. When somebody volunteers for Victoria Mansion, we do, at this time of year, we have what we call room monitors. So they will stay in a room, so they're only there for a couple of hours. Some people can only work for maybe an hour or two. We leave them in there with a chair, and then they can just come in and talk to guests. We have found that probably half of our guests, when they come to Victoria Mansion at this time of year, are really interested in history. But probably more than half just want to see the decorations. So it's a pretty easy volunteering gig. This was the green bedroom last year. So just to see how it changes every year, and how the designers come up with something fresh and new every year is an amazement to me. This, again, reflects the theme of last year, which was Victoria Mansion in Portland, City by the Sea. Our designer in this room, her husband built the sailing ship. I think it was called the USS Victoria Mansion. So, and this is just different views of the room from different years. So every year there's something for everyone. And this is the dressing room when it's not decorated. And actually, if I go back, that's with the dolls, that was the dressing room when it is decorated. This is the sitting room. This is also up on the second floor. And it's not odd to find a sitting room or a family room on the second floor in a Victorian home, because that's not an area for guests. This is strictly a family room. And you can tell if you know Victorian furniture, it doesn't look very comfortable. And that's really the essence of comfort in a Victorian home. So, yeah. So in the sitting room, ladies would teach their daughters how to do needlepoint, and how to play the piano. Boys would sit in the center table and play cards or cribbage or backgammon or those kind of things. Today, they'd be sitting around this, which again is not historically accurate, but this is the sitting room as of yesterday. And this, our theme this year is Christmas through a child's eye, and the designer interpreted this as Christmas through that child's eye, the first child, or baby Jesus. So everything around, you see angels, you see the wise men. So Karen Cole did that. It's a lovely room. And this is the sitting room in another year. This was likely, judging by the designs, this was likely City by the Sea. I just wanted to show you, before we step into the red bedroom, I can't say that I have a favorite room, but you can guess by how many pictures. This room is, I love this room. And there's so much in this room historically, and there's so much to see that even if we had no Christmas decorations in there, I call it an ooh and ah room, really, because there's so much in there. So they had running hot and cold water in this house, which is really outstanding when you think this house opens up in 1860. So they have porcelain sinks, and in the red bedroom, this is known as a guest room, they had actually 2 sinks, which I think is really fascinating that they would have that foresight to know that the 2 people sharing that room would probably each would want their own sink. Even in this day and age, they still are not building houses like this. So this is the original bed in the red bedroom. This is the sink from the green bedroom, from the master bedroom. And then this is the fireplace from the master bedroom that we had just seen. This is the red bedroom. This is a photograph taken from inside the room. And I will tell you, a few years ago as a guest, I wanted so badly to go up to the 3rd floor. The city doesn't allow us to take guests up to the 3rd floor because there's only one staircase. So without a secondary egress, you couldn't get people out in an emergency. But I really, really wanted to go up there, so I kept asking, how do I get up there? Okay, is there some way? Maybe I can make a donation. Maybe there's something I can do. And the lady who was standing in the red bedroom at the time said, well, become a volunteer, and then you can see the red bedroom. So I did, and so now there. So I will tell you, one of the biggest privileges, and I still, 8 years later, being able to step behind a rope and to take a photograph in a room, or just to be in a room, is absolutely, to me, it's just breathtaking. And I can say without a doubt that 8 years of being there, there has not ever been one day that I've driven to work and said, I don't want to work today. Because it's just a beautiful place to be. We're so fortunate to have it. This is another view of the red bedroom. This is not this year's decoration, but I pulled this because I believe this was, oh no, this is my first year as a volunteer, just because I thought it was a really cool design, and they all are. But I distinctly remember this one because those are windows in the back, and they actually had, they made some canvases, and the canvases were backlit so that you get this impression of wise men are actually walking outside your window, which, here's a hint, that's actually the 2nd floor, so those would be some pretty tall camels. But
There were never any posts on the front of that canopy?
no, that it's cantilevered. It would not have gone all the way down. This is not the original bed. The original beds were destroyed. This was from the same era. This is from a plantation not far from their home in New Orleans. And in the Victorian era, they're getting away from wrapping the beds in heavy curtains, as they did in the previous era, because Victorians are more about health and fresh air and wellness. So they want to be breathing fresh air. They want to go to the seashore, not necessarily to go swimming or to get a tan. They want to go to the seashore for the healing, what they believe are the healing properties. So Victorian beds in the opulent homes, you won't see the curtains as much. You'll also find, and I don't know if I put a photograph in this slideshow, in Victorian times, in a very opulent house like this, you start to see indoor plumbing, and you start to see bathtubs because they have running hot and cold water. Up until this time, you have to use a big tub that you're filling up with pails, and people are sharing bath water, and they're taking their baths maybe once a month, maybe less. And the belief up until this time is it's not necessarily because they don't want to bathe. It's because their belief is if they have dirt and oils on their skin, they would be protected from disease. That is the belief. Then the Victorians come in, and they have a lot more technologies than they've ever had before. And now they have homes that can have bathtubs with running water, running hot water. And it's not that opinions change dramatically. It's that opinions change because the rich have it, and people. Becomes fashionable. These are the trendsetters. Then they start to look at, well, maybe being clean is more of a healthy thing than being dirty. History is fun when you hear some of the gross things. So this is the double sink in the red bedroom. Oh, and this is some of the artwork. This was from the green bed, or excuse me, not the green bed, from the parlor. So my apologies that some of the slides are out of order, but you could pretend that you're running up and down the stairs of Victoria Mansion, because that's what I did. This is as you leave. We have the back porch. That would be all decorated, and this is at night. The designer last year did City by the Sea, and she did a rowboat, which I thought was really a clever idea. And that takes you back to my shop. So I had to sneak a picture in there. So that is the museum shop. And then this is Victoria Mansion.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you. Questions?
I just wanted to comment on the enormity of this,
Yeah.
these decorations, and just figuring this building and our sanctuary, and we're about the same size. Can you imagine decorating every piece of all of the walls in all of the parish hall and all of the sanctuary?
Oh, we should have a contest. We should have a contest.
I will tell you in November, because I set up the museum shop. I don't do well. I have done rooms, and actually the shop, well, it's about the same square foot as a room.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, for that month, it doesn't matter what invitations I get, I have to decline, because that takes so much work, and it's emotional work too. It's because you have to feel it to do it, and it's back-breaking work, but it's the funnest thing we'll do all year. And then we open up on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. Well, truthfully, we have to be finished the week before Thanksgiving, because that's when the press comes, and we also like to show our volunteers before the public. We like to show the volunteers so they'll know, because the decorations change every year. They don't always know what's going to be in there. So we just want to make sure they get a good sneak peek, and we give them a discount in the shop during that time, just so they'll come in and let them know we appreciate you coming in and volunteering during that time. So it takes an enormous amount of work. It takes an enormous amount of garland, Christmas balls, and then when we told them a few years ago they could no longer bring glitter into the house, they would just tell a bunch of designers they can't bring glitter in at Christmas time.
You can't get rid of it.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
What's up in the tower there?
Yeah.
What is that?
Probably that's just the sun from the other window, because there are 3 windows on each wall, so it's 4 walls of windows, and it's interesting that you would mention that, because some people like this about Victoria Mansion, and I want to be careful because there's a camera back there, but people always ask us if the house is haunted. So the official line is, if you believe it. But I will tell you, you just pointed something out in the tower, and I will tell you, as someone who has been there after hours, who has been in that tower alone, who has been there alone in the museum, I will tell you, you don't want to go into the tower alone at night. It's just...
We have an elevator like that.
Yeah.
If the house were closer to the sea, you might think that the person put it up there because they like widow's watches.
Yeah, it's interesting, because and that says a lot about the time and about society. And this is a man of society. So it is not a widow's walk, as you know, but that is Victorian air conditioning. It is set back farther from the sea because they don't want to bring a lady down to the waterfront at this time because the waterfront would have been very rough and tumble. And in fact, Mayor Neil Dow makes Portland a dry town partially because of what's going on at the waterfront. Even 8-year-old kids are drinking rum and are drunk at 12 noon. So the waterfront is very rough. So Ruggles would not have chosen this site if it were right on the waterfront because it would have been too rough to bring his wife to that. So this is moved back, and likely the tower is used as air conditioning. And I'm saying that kind of quickly without explaining, because hot air rises. They also had a very nice, intricate system into which we've tapped into, so we actually have air conditioning, which is really cool in a historic home. If you folks have ever toured a historic home in the summer, and I don't know why, we all seem to do that in the summer. If you're going to go look for a historic home, you're going to do it in the summer. I don't know why, because it's really like having worked in one without air conditioning, you're like the Wicked Witch of the West by the end of the day because it's hot and you can't open windows in those buildings. You open windows and then dust comes in and sunlight comes in. So it's awful. So we're able to tap into their original ductwork. Of course, now we have electricity and we have fresh air being powered in, but it's possible that they had fans in the basement and big blocks of ice that blew cold air upstairs. And then, of course, the hot air goes into the tower, which is another reason why I don't like the tower in the summer. The house is done in the Italianate style. While we're talking about, and you don't see many Italianate style homes in Portland, Maine. Back when this house is built, and he buys the lot in 1856. This is a double lot. When he builds it, the house behind it is there. The house next to it was there, but it wasn't 4 stories. But this is also, Portland is known as the Forest City at this time. So it's just covered in trees. And the idea was this house was going to blend into the scenery. There was probably not a Victorian garden, which I think is a disappointment to many who come to visit. Because remember, I mentioned when you see it from the outside, and there's usually someone, if I speak, or someone will come into the museum this time of year, and they'll be embarrassed to admit they've never been. And I think because I don't think it looks overly welcoming from the outside. He wanted it to look like a statue. He wanted it to look, he wanted you to go, ooh, when you walked in. I don't think he had any idea 150 years later that we would be bringing school groups, we would be bringing anyone who wants to come to Victoria Mansion to walk through there.
You said the red room was on the 3rd floor. I don't see a 3rd.
Sorry, the red bedroom is on the 2nd floor, and you really bring up a really great point. Henry Austin is the architect. There are actually 4 floors. So yeah, and standing back from the house, you can't see the 3rd floor. Why he designed it that way, we don't know, but I can tell you, if I can do this without tripping, this is actually on the 3rd floor. So the 3rd floor is, there are 4 rooms up there, and you can't see them from the exterior unless you're on the side. You can almost see them.
So that other bedroom is back behind that facade. Is that what you're saying?
No. There's a third. There is a 3rd bedroom on the 3rd floor. I didn't put that in the slideshow because it's a storage room now. But this is where the green bedroom is, front to back. That's 18 by 30, and then on this side it's much wider, and it's on the 2nd floor, but it's facing that way. So they see this building, which really kind of made them mad.
People can't get up there to see those?
They're not allowed to go up to the 3rd floor. No, you can see the 2nd floor. You can, definitely, you would go up the staircase. So where I took you on this journey of slides is where you would go as a guest. There was a movie that was just shown in theaters on Saturday called Buttons, from the book The Little Button Girl.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
You told us about that the last time you came, and I saw it.
You did see it.
It just leaped into my mind.
Oh,
I was
good.
going to remember to ask you.
Excellent. Yeah. They filmed some of the scenes from The Button Girl in Victoria Mansion. So actually what just reminded me was Jane Seymour is actually walking down those stairs. Yeah. So the movie was in theaters just one day only on Saturday. It was for PBS. So I'm hoping it shows up on public broadcasting or somewhere, or on DVD or something. It's just very, it's a Christmassy movie. It's a real feel-good kind of movie. But it's breathtaking to see Victoria Mansion. It's just a couple of scenes. But it was cool, and I was very fortunate to have been there for the filming. And that's how I know how creepy it is in the middle of the night. So. I do hope if you ever get a chance, I do hope you come, if you can. It's just a phenomenal place, and we're very lucky to have it. We're very, very lucky. It could have been torn down in the 1940s. Of course, at the end of the Depression era, the kids are grown and gone. There are two families that live there. First, it's Ruggles and Olive Morse. Then he dies in 1893. In 1894, she sells the house and all its contents to the Libby family. So the kids, there are 5 kids in that house, they all grow up and they move out and they have homes of their own. So they're not interested in this house in the 1930s because it's 14-foot ceilings and it's 11,000 square feet, and the 40s are a different time. It's more minimalist. Nobody wants a big old house like that, and this is the Depression, so no one can really afford it. So we know the Libby's department store goes under at this time. So the house really is going to be sold to an oil company who wants to tear it down and put a gas station there. So yeah. So in Earl, I know Earl Shuttleworth came and talked a few weeks ago. He probably had a lot of buildings that have been torn down in the name of progress. So over our dead bodies is that going down. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.